These are the notes for quadratic equations. This is one of the most important sections for the class, and later on in the section you'll see the quadratic formula. Now that one is already on your formula sheets, this one, but I cannot emphasize enough how important this one is, and I will show you that you can use this throughout the section for most problems. Even if it says factoring, I don't mind that you do with this and not factoring if you struggle with that. So just keep that in mind, and you'll see me here work both ways. Like here it says solve, and they're doing it by factoring. If I am going to factor, that's something that when you come to this class, you kind of should know. Now, if you're in the co-requisite or the lab, you will see that we did talk about factoring in the other class on how to factor trinomials. So here I will focus not so much on the factoring option, because if you know how to do that already, I'll let you do it that way. But if you don't, I will show you how you can go around it. So if I'm going to factor this, there's nothing in front of the x squared. I'm just going to worry about the 90. So I need a number that when I multiply them, give me negative 90. I'm just going to focus on the 90. I'm not going to focus on the signs for now. What about 5? 5 for sure. $90 divided by 5, 18. 6. Does 6 work? Sounds like it would work. 15. 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now when I add them, they need to give me a positive 1. So that has to be these. And to get a positive 1, this one would have to be negative. So now that I have it factor out, it would be x minus 9, x plus 10. So x minus 9, you separate each of them into its own little problem. Sorry, minus 10, minus 10. What? Okay. Minus 10, minus 10, negative 10. So those would be the two answers. Now, if you want to do it with the quadratic requires that you find a, b, and c. The a is a number next to x squared, the b is a number next to x, and the c is the number by itself. Now the formula looks like this. Now you don't have to memorize the formula because you have it on your formula sheets. You do need to know how to use it though, because I do require that you show me the work of the quadratic on your paper. Okay, so now I'm just going to plug in everything I have. Now what I recommend you do is, if you have the Casio that I told you to purchase for this class, this is where you would just set up your fraction and plug in everything you have. Now this has two answers, but I'm just going to do one and then I'll do the other one. I'm going to do the plus first. And there you go. That's the first one. Now I need to do the next one. So I'm going to just go on the arrows and change the plus. This one times. So either of the two methods works for me. Whichever one you feel better about, you can use. Solve this equation. Well, if you're going to do it by factoring, you see that they both have a p in common, so you can take out a p. So p would equal 0, and then p minus 3. So you add 3 on both sides. P equals to 3, and p equals to 0. If you're going to use the quadratic, your a would be 1, your B would be -3, and your C would be 0. I'm copying the formula here so you can see it. And then you can, once you plug all the numbers into the formula, you can plug it in here. Just create the fraction, and then you can put, I'm going to do the plus first. For some of you are already looking at it and thinking, well, that's going to be 0. But what I'm doing is showing you that you can just do it all the way in like this. Oh, I forgot to put the square. Were you screaming at me when you saw that I missed it? 3. And now I'm going to do the minus. Let's see. So the quadratic works as well as factoring. It just depends if you know how to factor, it's a little shorter. But if you don't know how to factor, sometimes you just don't have the time to learn that plus everything else that we have to learn in this class. So that's where you can rely on the quadratic formula. Now if you look at this one, they have a whole bunch of m's. When you have everybody has an m, you have to take the letter factor of the greatest common factor. So in this case, it would be 3m. I'm left with m squared minus 7m plus 10 equals 0. So 3m equals 0. Now this one is just going to be divided by 3 and you'll get 0. So that's one of the answers. Now over here, you can either again factor or use quadratic formula. So if I'm going to factor, I'm looking for numbers that give me 10 when I multiply and a -7 when I add. 1 and 10, 2 and 5. So that would be these. And to get the -7, both of them have to be negative. So I would get m minus 2, m minus 5. So m minus 2 equals 0, m minus 5 equals 0. And you solve each of them as its little equation. So you have 3 answers, 0, 2, and 1. Now if you're going to do this part with the quadratic, a would be 1, b would be -7, and c would be 10. Now get the quadratic formula. Remember, you do have it on your formula sheet, so that's, I'm just not going to copy it again here. And then once you plug all the numbers into the quadratic, you can use the calculator, set up the fraction, and do one at a time. Do the plus first. And I get 5. Then I'm going to do the minus. And I get 2. And don't forget that we still have that 0 over here. Now, don't focus, there's a lot here. Don't focus on both, just pick one. Do you know how to factor already? Then use this. If you don't, then use this. But just pick one and stick with that one rather than trying to figure out both methods. You don't have to. Just pick one, the one that you feel is easier for you. So if this is one where you can pause the video and try to do it by yourself if you've done factoring before. If I'm going to do this one by factoring, I would do it's a difference of squares, so it would be p plus 2, p minus 2, . Now, if I'm going to do it with the quadratic, my a would be 1, my b would be 0, because it's a number next to x, and we don't have that here. We don't have a single p. So that would be 0, and your c would be negative. Again, I get the quadratic formula from the formula sheet. You plug it in the calculator, and you will get these two numbers. So I'm not going to plug this one specifically right now, just so that I don't keep you here for so long, because I know that a lot of you will going to be watching the whole video, and I don't want to keep you longer than I have to. But always send me questions. If you didn't get the answer, please. Now let's talk about completing the square here. This one. This one is just factoring. Solve the quadratic equation by factoring when the leading coefficient is not 1. Okay. So if we're going to do that, then what you're going to do is you're going to multiply this one and this one. So that gives me a negative 6. I want them to multiply to a negative 6, and I want them to add to a negative. Now to get that, it will be the 2 and the 3, and to get a negative 1, the 3 has to be negative. What's happening? There. So when you're going to do the factoring, you got to be careful. You're going to put the 6 on both of them. So I'm putting the 6 on both numbers. Now you can go to solving from here, but the official factoring would say, then you divide what you can. Like here I can divide both of them by 2, and here I can divide both of them by 3. And what I end up with is 3y plus 1, 2y minus 1. And this is your factor form. And then you can solve from there. And then I am just solving for the numbers. So like I'm going to do plus 1 on both sides. And then divide by 2. So y equals 1/2. So my answers are these two. Now if you're going to use quadratic formula, your a would be 6, your b would be -1, and your c would be negative. Again, get the formula from the formula sheet. Once I have it set up like this, I can grab my calculator and just plug it in. And I get the 1/2. And then I'm going to put the minus. Get the -1/3. So either of the two methods works well for me. Whichever of the two you want to use, I have no problem. So here is one that I suggest. You have two here. I do suggest that you pause the video and try to work them on your own, either with the calculator and the quadratic formula or with factoring, and then we can come back and compare answers. Now from now on, I will focus on, I will focus on just quadratic formula. I feel that most students usually prefer that over factoring. Now, if you know how to factor, please just go ahead and use it. And if you have questions on factoring and you want me to help you with that, please reach out and I will definitely help you. But I feel like that's the method that most students rely on. And since right now I am recording this video with no one and by myself, I have to make executive decisions. So yeah, but do let me know if you want me to work on these problems by factoring. Please just take a picture, send me a message, and I will send you the factor for sure. So if I'm gonna do quadratic, A, B, and C. Now, when you're doing the test and you have to show your work, this is what I would expect to see. That you don't have to simplify further. You can show me this, and then you can use your calculator to get the answers, and that will be enough work for me. So it's T here. You're gonna see me use X instead of all the letters they gave us here. T is -2, and then I'm gonna do the minus. That's negative. We're gonna do the same thing for this one. So again, I suggest you pause the video, working it on your own, and then come back and see if you got the correct answer. I am doing quadratic formula. Again, I'm hoping that all of you have a printout of the formula sheet and you are looking at the formula. I am not putting it here for you. Once I substitute everything into the formula, I will just plug it in my calculator. I'm doing the plus first. I'm putting X again. She does it again, but it's supposed to be A. I'm gonna do a minus. And those are my answers. Now this is completing the square. This one again, when they ask you just for the answers, I don't mind that you use quadratic formula. In terms of completing the square, if you are planning on taking another math class like a pre-calculus or a calculus later on, you will need to know completing the square. Even factoring is something that you will need to know, but I feel like you can get away with not knowing how to factor, and I'll show you later on how to do that. But completing the square is something that you need to know how to do if that's gonna be another math class in your future. So we're gonna do this by first completing the square, setting that up, and then they want us to give them the answers. So the way we're gonna do that with this, the way you complete the square is the following. You're gonna get the equation, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave a space here, and I'm gonna take the number that doesn't have a letter to the other side. So in this case, it's 15, -15, but when I move it, it becomes a positive 15. The next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna grab the middle number here. You're gonna take that number, divide it by 2, and you're gonna square it. So I took the negative to always divide by 2, always square. And again, I wish I could highlight, but some it's not letting. So what I'm getting here, it's a 1. You're gonna take that number, you're gonna, in this case, add it to both sides. Now, the whole point of computing the square is to factor. We want it to look like that. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take You're going to do factor is going to be x. And you look at the parentheses. What do you get from that? Negative 2 divided by 2 is a negative 1. So that's where I got first. Let's go over the steps of the setup. This is the equivalent. This is what they're asking you on this first question. I took the number with no letter and move it to the other side. Don't forget to change the sign. Then I'm going to get this middle number, divide it by 2, and square it. All the time. It doesn't matter what number it is. You divide it by 2, you square it. And the answer, you put it on both sides. Now it comes time to factor. You always put the first letter here, so that's an x. And then you're going to get the number in the parentheses. So that's negative 2 divided by 2. That's a minus 1. And you always put the square. And that's going to equal whatever you got here, which was 16. We completed the square. Now, if you want to answer it, you would do the following. This is it's called the square root property. So what you're going to do is to solve it, you're going to take the inside, and it's going to equals positive and negative of the square root of whatever number you have there. The inside of the parentheses plus minus the square root of whatever number you have in there. So in this case, it would be x minus 1 equals plus minus 4. So with the plus minus, that means you have two equations. You have x minus 1 equals 4 and x minus 1 equals negative 4. And you're going to solve each one. So my two answers are 5 and negative 3. So what you see in green and purple, that's the equivalent or the setup. And then what I did later on was completely doing the answers. Let's do one more. We have one here. So again, the first thing, you always start by moving this number with no letter to the other side. So you end up with c squared minus 2z, and I'm going to leave a space, equals negative 4. Now, you're going to take that middle number, divide it by 2, and square it. And that's going to give me a 1, and you're going to put it on both sides. So then comes time to factor. You're going to do z, because that's what I have here, and the answer to this. So in this case, just the inside, so it would be minus 1, square it, and I get negative 3. Now to solve it, this is the equivalent. It says here to solve. See here how it just says solve by completing the square? Well, I'm not going to care how you solve them, so you could do quadratic formula, and I wouldn't care. But I'm trying to follow the steps. So then the way you solve it is you're going to take the inside, and you're going to do plus minus the square root of whatever number you have. This one is not as nice as the other one because this one is not going to have a real number, right? So we can take out the I. And because this is not a nice number, I'm just going to keep it like this and just do plus 1, plus 1. You cannot combine them because of the I. So your answer looks like this. Now my open math may want you to do it like this or separate. This is how the calculator gives it to you. You want either this or that. Doesn't matter. They're both the same thing. Now here's one more. It says first divide everybody by 5. Let's do that. And then after that, that's the new part. But after that, I feel like you can pause the video and work on it on your own and coming back and check. So if I were to divide everybody by 5, I end up with x squared minus 6x plus 5 equals c. So now that you have the setup, now I feel like you can pause the video, work on it on your own, and then come back and see if you got the right answer. Okay, now I'm gonna move the number with no letter to the other side. I'm gonna get the middle number, divide by 2, and square. 3, that's 9. So I'm gonna do plus 9, plus 9. Now comes time to factor. So it's gonna be x, whatever number in the middle, so that's gonna be minus 3, equals to 4. Okay, now comes time to solve. If I'm gonna solve, I'm gonna get the inside equals plus minus the square root of the number. Now for us, this one is a nice one. Square root of 4 is 2. So I have two equations. X minus 3 equals 2. X minus 3 equals negative. Plus 3, plus 3, plus 5, plus 3, plus 3. There we go. I was about to say, any questions? But I'm here by myself. And then we come to the quadratic formula, but I've already talked about it before. Now the answers here are going to look a little different, so that's why I want to make sure that we go over some problems. But the quadratic formula is your best friend, guys, from now till the end of the semester. Sometimes we get a break in between in the course in the quadratic formula, but then when you think, oh, it's gone, it will come back. So make sure you know how to work it. So if you're using the quadratic formula to solve, it has to equal 0. So here it doesn't equal 0. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move these two this way. So I end up with 2x squared plus 7x minus 15 equals 0. Now you may say, Miss, but I was going to move the 2x squared. It's fine. You can move the 2x squared and you still get the same answer. So my A is 2, my B is 7, and my C is negative 15. And then I'm going to do the quadratic formula. I'm plugging all the numbers in. And then I'm going to grab my calculator. And I get, what is it, 3 halves. And then the minus. Negative. Again, I would pause the video here, work on it on your own with the quadratic formula, and then come back and see if you got the right answer. I think we've done enough to the point where you could do that. So let's work on that. And I will work on it by myself here, and we can come back and compare answers. This is going to be W, right? I'm just going to, that's what I would expect for work. Just the setup, and then you can put it in your calculator. Okay, so this one is they said to separate the answers with commas. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to go in and put the minus. This one, look at the negative in the calculator. It has it on the side. So make sure that you put it on the side of the fraction. The another way to look at this would be like this. See, they take out the negative from both numbers and put it outside the fraction and gives you a plus. But this should be correct. Just make sure that the minus is outside the fraction and not next to the 3. This one has it next to the 3. That's one answer. But this one has to be on the side. So keep an eye on that because I've seen a lot of students get them wrong because of that. We have a few more here before we get to the word problems that you can either fast forward if you already know how to do, or like I said, pause the video each time, check your answer after I finish them, but you will see me not talk too much as I work them, but I do want to show you the steps because sometimes even if we have the notes already written down, seeing as they were writing them makes it easier, I think. So yeah, you won't see me talk too much as I go, but you can see that I am first finding my A, B, and C. I say I'm not going to talk too much, but I talk too much already, so I keep talking. I'm going to put it in the formula. And then I'm just going to put it in the calculator. For all of these, make sure that your mode is in complex. That's the safest mode to have. Because if it's complex, any imaginary answers will come up. And then if I put the other one, I think it's going to be the same thing as the previous problem where you will see them like this with the negative on the side. And that just means like that. So either of the two should be open. Now for this one, again, I suggest you pause the video, do it on your own, and then come back and check the answers. Make sure you set it equal to 0 first. So I'm going to move the 7, and it becomes plus 7. So A is still 4, B is A, but C should be positive 7. Then when I plug it in into the formula, oh, it looks something like that. Then I'm going to plug it in the calculator. -1 plus the calculator always makes it look a little weird. If you're not working with the Casio and you get an answer that looks that you think is different, please let me know. And I can check because a lot of the times it is correct. You just let me show you. I'll show you a different way to click on the answer. If you were working with by hand. So another acceptable answer is something like this. That's also X. It's the same answer. But if you work on it by hand, you end up with something like that. Here it needs to equal 0, so the 5 must come over here, so it's going to be minus 5. So it looks like that. A equals 4, B equals negative 3, C equals 7. A and then C. Then I'm going to put it in the calculator. It looks like that. Yeah. Now the next one is just going to have a minus, so it's going to be 3 over 8 minus. Now the next problems are word problems, and I think I'm going to put those two in a separate video because I anticipate that most of you will have issues with those, and maybe it's better to just have them separate. So I should have this link, and then below that you should see the application, the notes application problems video, and you will see that there. Just because, like I said, I think a lot of you are just going to struggle with that little thing, and I want to make sure it's separate. So yeah, check out that for the word problems. If you have any questions, please still let me know.